Afternoon, everyone. Today, we are going to be sharing some best practices for the Apprenticeship Illinois Intermediaries. And we're hoping that you gain a lot of insight as to how to prepare your application and then your role as an intermediary for the Apprenticeship Illinois program. Next slide. So again, Candace Dickerson, I am the Workforce Development Program Manager at NIU's Center for Governmental Studies.
And I'm Brian Richard, and as you can see from my camera of me, I lead our workforce development team at the Center for Governmental Studies and have done a lot of work with various state agencies in workforce and economic development over my career.
Next slide. So what are we covering today? Today, we're just going to give a good overview of what an intermediary is and how intermediaries play their role with the Apprenticeship Illinois program. We're going to help you with ideas on how to work with employers, the training providers, and the job seekers who will be your future apprentices. We'll also refer to the NOFO and other resources throughout the presentation. Next slide. All right, so again, as Kirsten said, this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to the Illinois WorkNet website. All of the TA sessions actually and tools are listed on that website as well. And all FAQs must be asked and will be answered on this site. So responses will be posted to the FAQ section of the NOFO website.
And just a note on that process, some of the questions are quite technical and sometimes we need to get sort of make sure we get the answer right, and that takes several eyes on it. And so just be patient and keep checking back on those FAQs, because sometimes it takes us a few days to make sure we get the answers correct.
That is absolutely true. Thank you, Brian. So what is an intermediary? According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, an intermediary is defined as a mediator or a go-between. So something or someone that provides like a happy medium or a means to complete something. So that is what an intermediary is. Next slide.
And as we were looking at these definitions, we found this other one from the Cambridge Dictionary that might seem more applicable in some situations that as you're doing this work. This definition says it's somebody who carries a message between people who are unwilling or unable to meet. So I know some of you that have worked with employers or worked with training providers or even worked with job seekers in the past. This might ring true and describe how it feels sometimes. And so getting more specific into what we're going to be talking today, broadly speaking, a workforce intermediary is somebody that helps people navigate the workforce development system. This system is complex. There's many players. They're providing all sorts of different services, from training to supportive services, to some focus on employers, some focus on job seekers, and it's just this really complex system that can be hard to access. I think this might be especially true for employers. They don't know even who to talk to if they're seeking help. So workforce intermediaries kind of play this role to bring all these pieces together. Most of them have dual customers. They're serving both job seekers and employers. They work with training providers to help them upskill, to help them help employers upskill their employees and new job seekers. And there's lots of examples of workforce intermediaries. There's community-based nonprofit organizations like, pre-apprenticeship programs that help underserved populations get into, say, construction apprentices. Most education institutes play this workforce intermediary role in some way. Local governments can serve in this role. You know, most of you are probably familiar with local job centers, like your American job centers and local workforce areas. This is obviously primary in their role. And unions are also an important intermediary, especially in the apprenticeship space.
All right, so most of you all, I'm thinking that are participating and attending this workshop has also attended the bidders conference as well. So you may know this information already, but as I mentioned before, I was a previous intermediary in a round of the apprenticeship expansion grants. And I was with the community college. With that college, we were able to offer like the training classes, RTI classes needed for the participants on campus. So we didn't need an additional partner for that. We did, however, coordinate with faculty to determine which programs will be best suited for an IT apprenticeship program, which is the program that we chose. We ran a pre-apprenticeship program also in manufacturing. And then once that was set up, we started recruiting. So this slide here talks about the different tasks that the intermediaries are tasked with being part of this role. When you, once we started recruiting, when we had everything set up, our recruitment focused on diversifying the IT industry, looking to recruit minorities and women, as this industry is typically not representative of that population. So with diversifying, you are going to run into persons that may have different barriers and obstacles that will get in their way of successfully completing the program. And your job as an intermediary is going to be to uncover the potential obstacles and determine in advance solutions to them. Childcare and transportation a lot of times seem to be the strongest barriers. However, stable housing is often a close third. Speaking to this slide, as an intermediary, we work with navigators to navigate and network with businesses and speak to our services and how we could potentially help them with their employee needs. We partner with our local LWIA for WIOA eligibility. We partner with our business training department to offer soft skill training to our participants. We also held different outreach events and breakfasts, attended chamber meetings, also that we could get the word out to employers about us being out there. And then we provided case management to our participants and determined and offered the supportive services to overcome barriers. Next slide. So again, the main goal of an Apprenticeship Illinois Intermediary is to ease the burden for businesses, particularly the small companies that do not have the personnel to execute such tasks. So they may perform administrative duties, such as registering the businesses with the Department of Labor and the apprentices, tracking activities, reporting results, etc. However, they also help help the employer determine their needs and coordinate apprenticeship programs to help them hire and mentor the apprentices. This is done by building like rapport and trust with the employer, kind of taking an interest into where they are going to go with their business and determining if an apprenticeship could be a viable solution, which actually oftentimes it is. Don't get me wrong, it's not done overnight, which is why it's very important to have a pipeline of employers to stay in close contact with your navigators, to attend different like chamber meetings and other events where you can network, hosting events, things of that nature. In fact, we found that like many employers aren't really even aware of the possibility of an apprenticeship to help the success of their business. So I know you may be considering a role as an intermediary and may be wondering why we are really putting an emphasis on this business engagement component, but businesses are at the root of the apprenticeships. So if there is not a business, there is no apprenticeship. Therefore, the intermediaries must understand business development and workforce development. You have to be able to understand how to cultivate new business, how to develop the workforce. And as a workforce intermediary, you'll be helping the employers reinterpret the skill and convince them to implement inclusive work-based systems, because it's going to take a little bit of help sometimes, helping them look at their traditional hiring practices a little bit differently. Next slide.
Okay, so, where do the intermediaries, where is their role? This graphic sort of shows this spectrum of getting workers prepared and into fully productive jobs. Starting from just, you think of a high school student thinking about what they want to do with their life, just being aware of different opportunities through exploration. And then typically as they move from high school into college, but this could also be a career changer, somebody that wants to look for different opportunities than where they are now. Start looking at career exploration and starts getting into preparing for the career that they want. And so this is really where most of the workforce development system comes into play. And intermediaries can be involved in some or all of these steps along this process, from talking to potential apprentices about the benefits, what it's like being an apprentice, coordinating some of the pre-apprenticeship if that's needed, getting people prepared to be successful within the pre-apprenticeship. Of course, working with, as we transition from, being a student, being a learner into the workplace, there's this process of onboarding, getting them understanding of, not only the skills that are needed on the job, but the culture of the business, which, it's going to be different from business to business, and sort of moving them through that process into full productivity. So, most intermediaries may be focused on maybe smaller components of this, but you may see yourself on multiple levels of this spectrum as you're doing your intermediary work. So there's really three main components to an apprenticeship. As Candace says, without an employer, there's no apprenticeship. Without an apprentice, though, there's no apprenticeship. And then we also have to have training providers to provide the skills to those apprentices as they become more productive for that employer. So we're going to kind of walk through, some ways you can work with each of these components of the apprenticeship system. So when an employer thinks about taking on an apprenticeship, if they don't have experience with it, they can really see this as a risky approach to hiring people. Some of those risks are real, and we'll talk about that. Some of them are maybe misperceptions about the way apprenticeship works. So we're going to talk about some ways we can address both the real risks that employers have when taking on this approach, and some of that maybe they're misperceptions. So this graph, this is the only graph we're going to show in this presentation. So, but it illustrates how early on in an apprenticeship, it really costs the employer more than the benefits they're getting back from their apprentice. So they have costs related to training their apprentice. An employer needs to provide a mentor to that apprentice. So that's a productive employee that's being taken out of their productive role and being put into a mentorship role so that their productivity is reduced. And that's going to provide a cost to the employer. And that, just like any new employee, that early stage apprentice is not going to be very productive at their jobs. They're not going to know all of the tasks they need to do. They're not going to have all the skills they need to be a productive employee. So a real risk employers face is that these additional costs that they face in the beginning could be lost if that apprentice suddenly leaves for another job after the employer's taken on all these costs to prepare them to be a productive employee. So this is something that employers are going to be focused on when you approach them if they don't understand apprenticeship very well. So let's talk about some ways we can help reduce that risk. We can reduce the training costs. You know, many employers that have apprenticeships, they pay for the apprenticeships training. But if we have employers that are reluctant to start an apprenticeship, we can reduce some of those costs through some public training funds. You know, you might use some of your grant funds if you apply for this particular NOFO to go towards supporting training the apprentices. Training providers, community colleges have access to lots of different financial aid that might be applied for apprentices as they go through training at the community college, for example. And other training providers may have sources of support. An important way to reduce the cost of training was created when the legislature passed the Apprenticeship Education Tax Credit. This went into effect last year. And this is a way for businesses to get reimbursed for their training expenditures for their apprentices through a tax credit. And they could either be reimbursed for $3,500 of training costs, up to $5,000 if they meet certain criteria, if they're in underserved areas or if they're serving underserved populations. So this can be a real way of reducing their risks. And we can also reduce their risk of apprenticeship cancellation. So cancellation is an apprenticeship term. We're going to start learning the lingo here. And so this is the term that the U.S. Department of Labor uses when an apprentice leaves their apprenticeship. And it can be for whatever reason. It can be because it wasn't a good fit for the employer, that they weren't producing and they got fired. But it also can be if they left on their own, if they had, say, problems at home, they had, you know, children or other family members they had to care for, if they had transportation problems, if, you know, stuff going on outside of the workplace can cause these cancellations. And so we might identify some supportive services to help them with those issues that are going on outside of the workforce to make them more likely to stay and complete their apprenticeship. So your role as an intermediary will be to reduce employers' risk by looking for external funding sources and also services that can help the apprentice both on and off the job. There's a lot of misperceptions about apprenticeship also, but a lot of the research around apprenticeship, when you actually go talk to companies that have adopted this model, the vast majority of them see it very positively. They see more productive employees. They see workers that are more committed to the company, and so there's less turnover in their organizations. You know, there's a good pipeline, you know, as people move up the chain within the company. If you bring them in through apprenticeship, they're more likely to feel a greater connection to the company and stay and move up as well and develop into future managers. And also the process of apprenticeship, where with mentoring and on-the-job training, you get better employee engagement, better problem-solving skills, more flexibility because they see a lot of different tasks. So a lot of the soft skills that employers say they're looking for all the time get developed through this apprenticeship process. So just like you're looking for real dollars to help employers, you also need to educate employers about the benefits of apprenticeship and reduce their perceptions of the risks that might be involved. And then, so there's an entire technical assistance session about the talent pipeline management, but Illinois has really found that this is an effective practice of engaging employers, and it's a way of engaging employers in a systematic fashion across your region. So I encourage you to go, and if you didn't attend the talent pipeline management session, to go and look at the recording of it. And here's another good resource for engaging employers, and it's posted on Illinois WorkNet. You see the link at the bottom, and we'll provide you with the slides here with these links. But this is a fairly short 10 to 15 page document that really walks through the process of engaging employers. And it starts before you even go and talk to them the first time, with research and preparation. And then it takes time to build these relationships. As Candace says, it just doesn't happen overnight. And you can see that employers are going to be reluctant to adopt this approach because of the risks and their perceptions of how it works. And then this document, does a good job of talking about ways to close the sale, how you get them to actually adopt the approach. Just going to sort of go over some high level points from the document. So recognize these challenges that businesses face. It's risky. They don't like change. Is another challenge that, we have advertised and hired people for years this way, and you're asking me to do something completely different. Research the business and the industry that they're in. So looking for, when you find businesses or you hear about businesses that have successfully adopted apprenticeship, look for similar businesses that might benefit. This is a good way of getting in the door, saying, this business that is a lot like yours has been really successful with this approach. And so these success stories can be really helpful to help you get in the door with employers. And you're always going to be learning about the businesses, the way businesses approach hiring talent and developing talent, and keep track of this. As your knowledge builds, you'll be able to apply it with each new business that you meet. And then be prepared. Know the value of apprenticeship. Know about the business that you're going to be talking to. Once you get in the door, you have to build a relationship over time. You're not just going to walk in the door and say, apprenticeship is the answer to all your problems, and they say, great, let's go. You're going to have to build trust with this employer. You need to validate their challenges, get a real understanding of what their challenges are, and understand their culture. Each businesses within the same industry are all going to have different cultures. Some are family run businesses. Some are, branches of multinational corporations, and the culture is going to be very different. And you need to take this into account as you're talking to businesses. Talk about how apprenticeship fits into their existing business practices, and just build this trust over time. And then as you understand their pain points, you can put together a package. We're going to talk about how apprenticeship can be customized. And so you're going to be able to customize an apprenticeship that fits their needs, addresses their concerns. And you're probably going to have to talk to multiple people within the same organization. You talk to some floor level supervisors. You're going to have to talk to ownership. You're going to have to talk to HR. And you have to build buy-in over the entire organization. And then bringing the right tables, making sure that you have a training provider that's going to provide what they need in the format that they need. So Candace is going to talk a little bit about some of the ways we can customize apprenticeships.
I am. Thanks, Brian. So yeah, as he mentioned, apprenticeships can be customizable, and it's including the training as well. So you may have seen this slide before, but I just want to focus on the way that the class can be delivered. Flexible to kind of help meet the needs of what the employer is, depending on their industry. So again, as mentioned before, apprenticeship training is a combination of the on-the-job training, the work experience, and the technical training. So the three approaches for delivering the training or the classroom part is traditional, front-loaded, and segmented. So traditional is where the apprentice receives both related instruction, which is your classroom, and the on-the-job training concurrently throughout the program. So an industry, for example, that this will work really well with could be like construction or manufacturing, where you can go to class, let's just say in the morning or for 5 hours or however long it is, and then you work that afternoon. So you're being able to put right into place what you just learned that day, right into action on the same time. So you're getting it concurrently throughout the program and really be able to apply what you learn on the job. The second approach is front loaded. And this is an approach that we used at the community college. And we focused on IT. So this is where the apprentices come and they do some of the related instruction before starting a job so that they can learn the critical skills required for the first day on the job site. So for example, if you're going into IT, chances are you need to know terminology, you need to know certain technical responsibilities, you need to know a lot of things before you can even just come in and even work a help desk or learn what networking is. So at a community college, they may, or an employer may want you to finish a certificate, or they may want you to finish a degree before you actually come onto the job site. So that would be an example of the front-loaded curriculum or approach. And then the lastly would be segmented, which is when the apprentices alternate between related instruction and the on-the-job training. So it may be something where the businesses may be cyclical, and depending on their needs, the segmented approach may best fit. Brian, did you have anything to add to that?
Nope, we can just move on and talk about how this training can be provided. And so all apprenticeship includes what they call, and then again, this is the DOL language, related training instruction. Or you might hear people say, throw around RTI. They're talking about the training. This can be from community colleges. It can be from private training providers. A lot of industry associations train people within their industry. Companies even have internal trainers that can be used for technical training. And the key role as an intermediary is to connect employers with appropriate training providers, and making sure that the content is right, but also the scheduling. You know, an employer may not have a flexible production. There may be very strict requirements about when employees need to be on the job. And so sometimes you have to work with a training provider to be more flexible in the way they're delivering their training. Maybe it needs to be at night. Maybe we need to have all day Friday training when they're used to doing, 2 hours Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So, this is one of the roles of the intermediary, is intermediating between employers and training providers to make sure that not only the content, but the way it's delivered. Some employers may have classrooms and want the community college to send instructors onto the work site. And so that's something that happens occasionally with apprenticeships. So just, we talked about building trust with employers. You also have to build trust with your training providers to get them to work with you as you're developing the training for the employers. Just a quick example of something we heard of from one of our current intermediaries at the Calumet Area Industrial Commission. One of their companies, Flexingate, who's developed some apprenticeships, hired somebody to be an internal trainer. And the intermediary worked with them on getting them registered with the Department of Labor, getting their apprenticeship registered with the Department of Labor. And then once they are registered for the Department of Labor, that internal trainer can be added to what's called the eligible training provider list, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But the eligible training provider list then makes them eligible for workforce development, some types of workforce development dollars, so that the company was able to be reimbursed through grant funds for their internal training activities. So many, many different ways that training can be delivered. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about working with job seekers, the apprentices and potential apprentices that you might be working with. We can find them in a variety of sources. You know, a good place is community colleges, training providers, you know, going to job fairs and talking about the benefits of apprenticeship and talking about the employers you're working with. There are a number of pre-apprenticeship programs around the state that are designed to help people, particularly people that are underrepresented in apprenticeship. You know, construction apprenticeship in particular is about 90% white male. And so there's a lot of these pre-apprenticeship programs designed to help the women and minorities be prepared to be successful within construction apprenticeship programs. And there's other nonprofit agencies working to get people ready for employment. And then employers, you know, might have applicants that they want to put into apprenticeship, or incumbent workers that they want to upskill through apprenticeship. So one of your roles will be to help employers finding these candidates and making sure they're ready to succeed in these apprenticeships. So something that's been found to be a best practice when you're developing a new apprenticeship program with an employer that hasn't used it before is to work with them to put incumbent workers into their first apprenticeship program. So this helps them upskill workers who have already proven to be good employees. They know that this employee is a good fit for their business, and we're going to get them higher skills and move them up within the company. That employee that goes through the apprenticeship program then is well prepared to be a mentor for the next set of apprentices or the next apprentice. And you're creating this system within the company by training the trainer, that, you know, the way the on-the-job training is delivered by mentors and others within the company is well understood by multiple people within the firm. And it increases the employee's connection to the company, and improves connections between employees within the company, just improving the workplace culture through the process.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that, Brian, as well, that the incumbent worker could be as we would call, like a low-hanging fruit, because they're already there, so that you can kind of talk to the employer about what they have as potential people that they see something in that they would want to advance on. And it can also just kind of bring in the morale of the other employees that work on site as well. So great. All right, so if you guys have read the NOFO, there are mentions throughout the entire NOFO several times about the targeted populations that the grant wants to serve. Some of the populations are going to be listed on the next two slides, but just know that the Apprenticeship Illinois Committee, Governor Pritzker, the U.S. Department of Labor, and DCEO are all putting an emphasis on targeting underrepresented populations. The full list of the populations is on page 15 of the NOFO. You want to read that? Next slide. And again, these are the additional ones, but I want to highlight. Let me go back. I think.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Okay, so I wanted to highlight though the last three, because these are three that we really want to focus on. Individuals with disabilities, the LGBTQ individuals, and minorities that are underrepresented currently in registered apprenticeships throughout Illinois. So if you can work with businesses or agencies that service these individuals or are these individuals, that will be greatly looked upon favorably. But all of those target populations are what we're looking to serve. So some people may ask, I understand that we need to address diversity, equity, equality, I'm sorry, and inclusion. But we want to, and I'm just not exactly how. So some may see it as a heavy lift for their organization. And I'm just hoping that this slide will offer some simple strategies that can help you address the DEI. So number one is a change in the recruitment practices. So as mentioned earlier, we are looking for partnerships to be developed with our grantees. So regarding recruitment, maybe one could be start looking at where you are pulling your participants from. Attend events where that population would be. Recruit from schools where the students may not have resources available to them to even know what that apprenticeships exist. When hosting events, make those from the targeted populations feel included. It's really important. Make them feel part of the event. Make it comfortable for them. Women and people of color, for example, like to see people looking like them attending the event, yes, but also to see someone like them on the other side of the desk. Someone may be recruiting them. They want to see people that look like them on the marketing materials. These minor tweaks can definitely make one feel more included and wanted and want to pursue the opportunity that you're kind of addressing or offering to them. Also help to address discrimination within programs and workplaces. Same thing, work with the businesses to address discrimination internally. Apprentices can help businesses to have a diverse population, but reminding them that they have to feel included and treating them equally as other populations is very important and necessary for this to work. Lastly, just keep in mind when recruiting from these targeted populations, they may need additional supportive services. So make sure you speak to the participants, see what barriers that they're facing that could contribute to them not being successful in the apprenticeship, and be prepared to address those moving forward. Next slide. Okay, so again, I mentioned that I was a former intermediary. We had to build partnerships. We kind of covered a lot of these before, but you want to get the word out that you have a service that could possibly benefit employers. So partner with your local LWOA. We partner with it for WIOA eligibility before. Partner with business training departments to offer soft skills. As Brian had mentioned before, canceled apprenticeships do exist. So you want to equip them with all the resources that you can, and that will give them what they need to be successful and more equitable. Again, when providing the case management, determine and offer the supportive services that you need to overcome the barriers, and work with your navigators to network with businesses and speak to the services that you have and how you could potentially be a resource to their employment needs. Next slide.
Okay, so there's two types of intermediary applications that we're going to be looking at, that DCO is going to be looking at. One is for the existing intermediaries. So there are a number of, I think, 15 Apprenticeship Illinois Intermediaries were funded in the last round and have been operating for 12 to 18 months and are starting to build some results. And so for those applicants, we're looking them to just build on what they've been doing, expand what they're doing. They're starting to get apprentices into programs and new businesses to adopt, and some of them are close to getting additional businesses to adopt. So we're looking for them to build on what they've already been doing. Some of you might be new to this and considering applying for the intermediary funding. We're looking for intermediaries in some new areas of the state. There's some holes in our geography, especially in the central part of the state, where we're really looking for people to step up and become both navigators and intermediaries. And so, the new intermediaries, obviously you haven't been one before. You might be looking at new industries. There might be not new to you, but new to DCO in terms of their funding to the state. And so the review of the application will recognize the differences in outcomes for startups versus existing programs. They're going to expect more out of existing intermediaries because they've built the foundation to be successful. Everything we've described, working with businesses, working with training providers, working with to identify apprentices. We've said it over and over, you have to build trust. It takes time to educate and build trust. The system of funding the new intermediaries recognizes this and recognizes that it takes time for new programs to start up and start showing results. So one of the requirements of in the NOFO is for each applicant to have a memorandum of understanding between their organization and the local workforce area. This is all spelled out in the NOFO, and we're also working on getting some sample language posted to the FAQ section. That should be up within the next day or two. We're very close to having that finalized, but it has to describe how you're going to work with your local workforce area on identifying potential apprentices, determining what services or what supports they might be eligible for, getting them enrolled in the system, partnering with them on case management. And then there's all these reporting requirements. There's certain performance requirements that both the grantees and the local workforce areas have expectations for. And a lot of this is tracked, if you're not familiar with IWDS, that's the Illinois Workforce Data System. I think I have that right. There's a lot of acronyms in this space. But getting the information that needs to be entered into the system, and you'll work with your local workforce area on getting that. And then, you're going to track your apprentices and work with the local workforce areas to keep up with them as they go through the system to make sure they are able to be successful.
Yeah, and I just wanted, sorry, just to add one more thing to the MOUs, just a reminder that they are most critical in defining the roles and responsibilities specific to the grant application. So you want to make sure that those roles and responsibilities are clearly defined. So the timeline of the application. So we're doing the workshops now throughout July. There may be a couple more that get into August at the beginning, but stay tuned. The applications are due at 5 p.m. Central Time on September 15th, and they will be emailed in. I would highly recommend that you get it in as soon as possible. If you're waiting till that day, as it goes, it's time stamped, so you don't want it to come in at 5:01 and then be declined and we cannot accept it. So make sure that you get that in ample time, 5 p.m. Central Time in September 15th. We will be doing the grant negotiations following that for the remainder of the year, October, November, and December. And we anticipate that the grant will be awarded by the first of the year, January 1st, 2022. All right, and Brian touched on this with the grantee requirements, just did not want it to be, wanted to give you kind of an idea of what are some of the requirements that you would be responsible for when you are an intermediary grantee or a grantee in general. The first thing is you'll become familiar with it, but we want to make sure that your agency is located on the WorkNet Service Finder. It's just going to ask you to list your name, your company name, 2 contacts, like a primary and at least 1 secondary. And you want to select apprenticeships for your provider status so that we can know when we're looking to do a report of our own, we'll know what providers in Illinois are actually registered. The second, engagement of employers, contact versus engage. This is just still critical, which is why I keep mentioning it. An engaged employer, according to the Department of Labor, is one that's ready to adopt apprenticeship programming and is planning to host a registered apprentice. And a contact is one that has been, you've outreached to that organization, you've discussed it, the opportunities with the decision maker, so you at least talk to them. We cannot have a situation where you attend an event and there are 40 people there unless you have meaningful conversations and really discuss the opportunities for an apprenticeship. That is not an engaged contact. So we want to just make sure that you're clear on the rules of what that is. These are going to keep being repeated because these are things that will lead to the ultimate goal of you being able to register, have new registered apprentices. The grantees are also going to be required to submit written testimonials for program participant success. And we're going to post it on Illinois WorkNet because we always want to be in front of everything to show how programs are making a difference, you know, in the state of Illinois. And last, a couple more things. You want to complete the quarterly performance report. That's just making you realize that you're on track to meet your deliverables, as well as keep DCEO informed of your progress. And they can provide technical assistance if it's necessary to help you along. And then lastly, the ETPL, which is the eligible training provider list. Any provider that you use must be on that list. If you are providing RTI instruction for a DOL registered apprenticeship, they can be added if it's not already on the list. But any training provider that is part of a DOL registered apprenticeship program can automatically be added to the ETPL. Next slide. So federal funding is the source of funding for these grants, and it's going to require that 750 new apprentices be established in the state. So the most important deliverable or outcome is that you help the state to meet its 750, and whatever your work plan suggests is that you meet those or exceed those as well. The pre-apprenticeship participants, people do want to know if those could be an applicant or a participant, and the answer is yes. However, they must successfully transition into a registered apprenticeship program before the grant ends. So there cannot be anything written out to say that we're going to just serve pre-apprentices. Those words, I swear, you have to watch yourself when you're saying them. You can't just serve pre-apprentices unless they are going to be entered into a registered apprenticeship program before the grant ends. You also have to make sure that you have the number of businesses engaged, and again, have the right number of registered apprenticeship programs that you are going to start.
And just, we're getting to the part of the presentation where we're sort of explaining the technical details of some of the things you need to keep track of and be aware of if you're successful in getting the funding. So we sort of apologize for the laundry lists of things here, but it's all part of the technical requirements. And we just want to make sure that you're coming in aware that there is a decent amount of data tracking that is required here. So
yeah, just don't want any surprises for you. And we're going to get through these next few slides in a couple of minutes. This right here is, if you just can refer to page 10 of the NOFO and attachment 3, it's in there. Again, the main thing, the number of apprentices is necessary, and make sure that you're doing your employer outreach. Next slide. Okay, so if you are awarded this grant, this is a training that you will also go through: how to use Illinois WorkNet to track Apprenticeship Illinois participants for intermediaries. So we just want to make sure that you know that we are providing training for you to use all of the resources that are available to you as a grantee. And the link for that is here as well. Next slide. As Brian said, we are wrapping up some of the presentation now, but wanted to just share some more resources that will be useful to you while you prepare your application. These resources are mentioned throughout the NOFO, so you can just take heed of those. Next slide. These are just some additional ones. And remember your American Job Center, which is a really good one. Next slide. I am going to recommend that everyone who has anything to do with apprenticeships or just workforce at all in the state of Illinois to register for the Workforce GPS. There are several resources like PowerPoints, webinars, PDFs from the USDOL to just kind of help you become stronger in the apprenticeship realm. Help you learn about different topics, various trainings like career pathways, workforce system strategies, creating diversity in apprenticeships, etc. So make sure you log into that. Next slide. Again, the Apprenticeship Illinois website is very robust. It has a great professional development content area. There you're going to find resources to help you navigate through the world of apprenticeships. Again, PDFs, PowerPoints, webinars on various topics like how to engage businesses, speaking the language of businesses, the benefit of creating apprenticeships, partners, the roles, etc. So really, really helpful. And the next slide just shows, another screenshot of how that site looks. Next slide. Okay, so the Apprenticeship Illinois Partner Guide is a guide that was put together to be used by the workforce partners when you're in the Apprenticeship Illinois program. Only partner accounts that have been granted access will see this program listed in their customer support center. So again, you want to make sure that you are listed, as I mentioned to you before, as an apprenticeship. Next slide. Chicago Apprenticeship Network. I can't say enough good things about it. Basically, it was founded by Accenture, AI, and Zurich North America. Great resource. They host a lot of networking events. Their motto is talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. Their goal is to bridge the gap by raising awareness of apprenticeships, helping more businesses establish successful apprenticeship programs to offer more opportunities to the people in Chicagoland. The playbook, which is why I wanted to show you this when you get a chance, the apprenticeship playbook gives you a very detailed play-by-play on how to set up a successful apprenticeship program. And then the apprenticeship starter guide just gives you a quick overview if you want to just kind of get your feet wet into that. Next slide.
All right.
Oh, we're at the end. Brian.
Left 5 minutes, and I did see at least one question, if I can figure out how to bring the chat back up here.
Yes, Brian, the one question was, can private consultants be intermediaries?
So this is one of those questions that my answer is, I'm not absolutely sure. I am pretty sure that none currently are in the current round, but I don't see any. So this is not an official answer. This is my opinion at this point, just to make that clear. I don't see any reason why you couldn't if you meet all of the requirements of the NOFO. But the official answer is that we will run this by people that actually know the answer and get this posted to the Apprenticeship NOFO website under the FAQ questions.
Yes.
And then are intermediaries required to restrict services to a region, or can they be in multiple regions or statewide? So this I do know, you can be in multiple regions. And so, intermediaries typically, more typically have sort of an industry sector focus. So if you're working with an industry that you're trying to help statewide, and you have a plan to serve that industry statewide, I think there are some existing that work at least across a wide region, if not statewide, but focused on a particular industry. What qualifies? So this question of business engagement. One of the reasons we kind of emphasize that is it's a question that's come up recently as we're developing the data collection system and trying to get clarification to our existing grantees. Some are sending in lists of, as Candace said, 40 people that attended an event that they held, and others are only sending in those that they've talked to multiple times. But there's a very specific DOL definition of that I don't have at my fingertips.
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, you have it, so
it's-
good. Yeah.
It's the one I read and it's on the slide as well. Engage employers, our employer adopted apprenticeship program and is planning to host a registered apprentice. And a contact employer is outreach to organization and discuss apprenticeship opportunity with the decision maker. So it's basically, you didn't contact them just because they came to an event. You contacted them because you did actually speak to someone about it, at least about it. And then engaged is one that you actually have a relationship with, for lack of a better word, that's contemplating the idea of actually doing an apprenticeship. I hope that's a little more clear.
Yes, and another good question about contradictions within the NOFO and maybe with some of the technical assistance. Certainly a customized approach can be proposed, and I think it should be appropriate, and we will make sure that that is understood in the scoring well, both in the FAQ, but also as your applications are being evaluated. Any other questions? I'm showing 1:59. Pretty good timing. So yeah, if you do, as it says here, if you do have additional questions, you can send them to that email address, or there's a FAQ button on the NOFO website, and I'll let Candace wrap it up.
Well, we just wanted to say thank you for attending our technical assistance training on how to just better equip our intermediaries. I wish you guys the best of luck for any of you that are looking to apply. Again, if any questions come up, make sure they email the appropriate email address that was provided, and they will get the answers posted on the FAQ in a reasonable amount of time. So thank you guys so much. And any questions that are in the chat, we will get those addressed and uploaded to the FAQ as well.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.